Viewer discretion advised. Podcast may include graphic content, violence, substance use, and foul language. I recite the stories in this show as they are written to the word, with the only exception being if grammatical errors need corrected. Thank you for watching. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Scared Shitless. Today, we'll be listening to Anansi's Goatman. This story is a little bit of setup, so let's get into it. I was 16. I had family down in Alabama. They farm and own a huge amount of land in Huntsville. Uncle owns a big house and a bunch of trailers that they put out in the woods for hunting and camping. My down south cousins suggest that we go out there to camp. They know I'm a kid from Chicago, so they tease the fuck out of me. We collect food, kill a pig, and some chickens, and bring necessities out to camp for a few days. We get to the camp and it's obvious something's weird. Air has this weird electric smell right before a storm, like ozone. We think nothing of it, and unpack and go down to the little creek to swim for a few hours. All of a sudden, some older white guy and a white teenager come out of the bushes. He has a shotgun in the crook of his arm and says hello, and asks us what we're doing this far back in the woods. I tell him about my uncle, who he knows, and say we're camping out. He tells us we need to be real careful out here and stick together. There was a big animal in the woods. His son, who is my age, asks if he can stay and hang out with us. His father says okay. So we end up playing football. Dicking around with me, there's the white kid, Tanner, 5 of my cousins, and then 4 of their friends. In total, there were 5 girls and 6 boys. We were all around 15 to 17 years old. We ended up just dicking the day away. So, we head back to the camp and pulling out some stuff for a campfire, even though the trailers both had kitchenettes. Tanner says that his family's property sits right up against my uncle's. He wants to run home and ask if his dad can come out camping with us. My cousin Rooster says he's going to go with them since it's going to get dark soon. One of the girls also is to tag along. It's about 7 o'clock, and it's starting to get pretty dark. They take flashlights and take the trail toward Tan's property. The rest of us chill. We make s'mores, drink, and kiss on the girls. About 30 or 40 minutes later, there's the smell of ozone again. You could smell it over the smell of the fire we had started. This really nasty, coppery smell, like right after you've had a nosebleed and it's stopped. It wasn't exactly like dried blood, but it was that nasty metallic, back of your throat smell. We immediately think it's some kind of electrical malfunction, or someone left a hot plate on or some shit. We search the trailers, nothing is on, and we can all smell it. All of a sudden, we can hear people booking down the path towards us, and Rooster, Tan, and the girl all come running into the clearing, out of breath, and they don't even break stride. They all run into the trailer, right by where the fire is. We all gotta get the fuck out of here and into the trailers. They end up calming down, and Rooster is crying his fucking eyes out at this point. All the while, the fire is guttering lower and lower. So my other cousins say fuck it. We were about to go outside to get the generator out of the shed between the trailers. Tanner goes, "Fuck no, lock the door, ain't nobody else going outside." He's been crying too, and his eyes are bloodshot and puffy, and his pants are dirty as shit. He goes on to tell us that they went up to his house. His father said sure, he could go out camping, but to make sure they were careful on the way back. and that maybe they should take one of the hunting rifles just in case. Evidently, Tanner had seen something in their yard a few days before. One of their pigs had come up ripped and half-eaten. They assumed it was just some big cats or coyotes, even though they usually don't fuck with live animals. He had gone upstairs and packed his stuff, and told his dad that they would be okay without the rifle, because coyotes avoid people. So they started walking back toward where they were camping. So, Rooster finally stops crying and shaking. The girl already had, but she was just staring out the window with a dumb look on her face. He says they had gotten halfway into the woods toward the camp when they started to hear shit in the forest. It was almost pitch black by this time, so they weren't sure at first what the fuck it was. The girl said that she'd heard something in the bushes, right off the trail, and they all beamed their flashlights over there, and there was someone standing in the back of the woods in a little hollow. Rooster said they shouted at him and told him that he was scaring the fuck out of him, and what a dick he was. He says that's when he realized that this guy was facing away from them. So they keep walking, and they start smelling the nasty, coppery ozone smell. They say that they look off into the forest on the opposite side, and it's a dude standing in the forest, slightly closer to the path. So now, they start power walking. Tan keeps going. I should have taken the fucking rifle. As they're telling the story, the smell is still super strong, even inside the cabin. They say after that, they started walking faster. A kind of low gibbering had started coming from both sides of the wood. And as they started booking it back to the trailer, the girl said she had flashed her flashlight out into the woods, to the side of them, and had seen something jerking itself through the woods. The gibbering just got louder and louder, and when they could see the light from our campfire, something had come out of the woods, about 40 yards behind them, onto the track, and they had just flat out ran as hard as they could back to the trailer. So we're out in the fucking woods, and we're assuming that at this point it's some rednecks or some shit trying to fuck with us. All of a sudden, my other cousin Junior starts going on about how he went to school with a native kid that was telling him about the Goatman or some shit. We promptly tell him to shut the fuck up because we don't need time for any spooky talk right now. But he just keeps going on and on about how it's the fucking Goatman, and how we're in his woods and blah blah blah. Now at the time I'd never heard of this Goatman or any of that, but then a couple years ago, the year before I graduated from college, I had a Manam for the roommate. I ended up asking him for about it, and to sum it up, it's basically a fucking man with the head of a goat, and he can shapeshift, and he gets among groups of people to terrorize them. It's also supposed to be like some kind of like Wendigo, and it's a bad mojo to even talk about it, and even worse if you see it. Keep in mind, I didn't know this back when I was 16, so my cousin is going. The Goatman's going to get in and fucking get us. The girls are all terrified. My cousins and I are all fucking trying to figure out if it's just some hillbillies or an animal. So all of a sudden, the smell just goes away. Like to this day, I haven't even experienced anything like it. Like usually smells fade away or lessen. It was literally there 1 second, and then not the next second. So after an hour, making it around 9 or 10, we stopped shitting bricks enough to go back outside and stoke the fire again. We figure it was just some assholes trying to fuck with us, so we don't go home, because we think if we do, they'll chase us through the woods or some crazy shit. Nothing else weird happens that night, and we stay another night. And for the main part of the night, nothing happens. At about 1 in the morning, we're going outside getting drunk and telling ghost stories. As someone is finishing some too spooky story, I don't remember what about. The smell comes back. It's so fucking strong, and one of the girls literally starts vomiting. I stand up, and you can actually feel how clammy the air is. I say we should get inside, and this isn't right. We should have just fucking left. We all go back inside, and we're standing around. My cousin just keeps going on about how it's this Goatman, and my cousin Rooster tries to shut him the fuck up. All the while, I'm just feeling that something is wrong, and I can't figure out what the fuck it is. We end up sitting in there for a while. The smell is just as strong, and we're terrified and all huddled in this camper. We end up cooking brats for everybody because nobody wants to go outside. It's one of those packs with 4 brats. We have a total of 3 packs. I grill them up on the stove and give everyone a hot dog. I get mine. After a while, one of my cousins gets up and goes over to the pot to get one. He starts grumbling about how I get 2 brats and everybody else only got 1. I look at him like he's fucking stupid. I tell him everybody got 1 because there were only 12 brats. If he wants more, he should open up a new pack and cook some more. That's when the girl who had been out with Rooster and Tan starts screaming, "Oh Jesus! Oh Lord! Get it out!" She's crying and shivering, and it dawns on the cousin standing up what the fuck is wrong. Me and him glance around the room, and then I feel my heart fucking sink. I run the fuck out of the cabin, and the girl runs with us. The trailer door is banging against the side of the trailer. Everybody books it out of the cabin. One of my cousin's friends asks about what the fuck was wrong. I start counting us. There's only 11 now. I shit you not. My cousin verified. There had been 12 people in the cabin. But being that everybody didn't really know each other well, nobody had really noticed the whole fucking time that there was an extra person. And then I realized earlier that I'd kind of noticed something was off. You know, when you're just dicking around having a good time, that you don't sweat the smallest shit. And you don't always keep track of certain stuff. I'm dead sure that someone else had been in the trailer with us, and that they could have been there for at least a fucking day, eating with us. What makes it worse is, I could figure out which one because I didn't think anyone ever actually interacted with the other person. The girl kept praying to Jesus, and we're all sitting outside. Eventually, we get big ass sticks and go back in the cabin. Since nobody's in there, we count again, and there's 11 people. We go back into the trailer and lock the door. We explain what the fuck happened, and the girl says that she realized too. And that when he was about to say something, the person sitting next to her had grabbed her leg hard and leaned over toward her and said something she couldn't understand. So we are pretty much scared as fuck as we huddle together, and I fall asleep. When I wake up, the sun is just coming up, and half the people are asleep. The other half are packing our shit up. We all want to walk back home, but like 4 people want to stay till the sun is all the way up. And some people think that we're just fucking around and want to stay at the trailers. I just want to get the fuck out of the woods. The girl's name was Kira, the one that the Goatman had touched. Anyway, I asked her if she really thinks it was something bad. She says she just wants to go home. She doesn't want to be out in the woods again alone for another night. So we decide to split up. The 4 that want to go can go. But I have to stay because I have the keys to the cabin. And it's my uncle's and I have to lock it up. I'm super pissed at this point. Because I feel like people aren't taking this shit seriously. and I definitely didn't want to be out in the woods for another night. I spend the rest of the day trying to convince the rest of the people, now 4 girls and 4 guys, to get the fuck out of Dodge. Tanner leaves with them to go get a rifle and says he'll be back. So there are just 7 of us left by 4 p.m. At around 5 p.m., he hasn't made it back yet. And we're getting extremely fucking antsy. And the only reason I stopped begging them to go back is because he went to go get a gun. It's about 5:30 p.m. or so. When the one cousin that did stay says that the girl Kira is outside. We all look outside, and sure enough, she's standing by the fire pit with her back to the cabin. I'm thinking to myself, if she was so fucking scared, why the hell would she come back? And then I get this nasty, churning feeling in my gut. Keep in mind, the whole time the coppery smell has been gone. Now I realize I can smell just a twinge of it. I say to the rest of them, everybody, and these are the people that wanted to stay in the fucking woods after we had the goddamn Goatman in our midst, is laughing at me, asking if I set this up to scare them. I'm looking at them like, I'm not fucking bullshitting you at all right now. I ask them, why the fuck would I play like that? So one of the girls goes outside to get Kira. She gets halfway to her and stops cold. Kira starts heaving. I don't know how the fuck to describe it. Sort of like someone with their back turned was laughing without actually making any sound. It was this fact that made me realize there was not a fucking sound in the whole woods. It was dead silent. This was like later in September, so it was still fairly hot at the time. But it was super chilly some days too, and you could usually hear big ass geese honking or some kind of birds or squirrels chit-chatting. So I step out the door and I tell her to come back in the fucking trailer right goddamn now. She backs up into the trailer and we lock the fucking door. We pull down all the shades except one and put a guy there in a chair to watch her. She stands there for another 20 minutes or so. The guy turns to say that she's still there, and there's a huge fucking bang on the door. We all jump the fuck up and scramble around the living room of the trailer. The banging is super fucking loud. So now my cousin is holding one of the girls, and the other 2 are kinda giggling with nervous laughter, and me and the other 2 guys are shitting bricks. Then we hear Tan. He's screaming, "Let me the fuck in! Stop fucking playing!" So we go over to the door and open it, and he stumbles in with a rifle. There's nobody else outside. Evidently, he had walked up to the campsite. Nothing weird happened in the forest, but he had seen a girl. Mind you, he said it was not Kira standing there. When he had gotten to the edge of the clearing, she had turned towards him with a slack-jawed look and just stared him down. Slowly tracking him as he walked around the outside of the clearing towards the camp. He said it wasn't until he was almost halfway to the trailer he'd realized she was getting closer to him. She had started off by the fire, and without him even seeing her move, she had been turning, inching closer. He had said he had just ran the rest of the way back to the cabin thinking it would be open, and when he got to the door and it was locked, he turned, and it was about half the distance to the door. He looks around the room and gets super pale. He pulls me to the side and whispers in my ear, "You know there are only 7 of us here, right?" I get that feeling where your stomach drops to your nuts. It had been back inside the trailer while we were sorting out who was going where. And then, when we all went outside to talk earlier in the day, it has just slid back in. We looked out the window, and there's nobody out there. So we recount everyone, and then basically, I go over and ask everyone how many people were here earlier. and everyone says 8. I say, well, how many people are here now? They all do the count and realize there are only now 7 people in the cabin. Satan had brought back a couple boxes of ammo in his rifle, and he had told his dad that there was some kind of animal in the forest, because he didn't think his dad would believe him if he said it was the Goatman. He says that his cousin is supposed to be coming down in a few hours, and that in the morning we can all go back to his place, and his cousin will drive us home. Now I'm really fucking terrified. But I at least feel better, because we can be American and shoot the fuck out of whatever it is if it comes back. But then my cousin gets into this huge argument with one of the girls, because she thinks I'm trying to be funny and prank them, and that she's getting really scared and that I'm not funny. He keeps telling her that I'm not that kind of person, and she says, well, how do we know the girl wasn't just Tanner in a wig? Or if it's really the Goatman? How do we know that this is the real Tanner, and that that Goatman didn't just kill Tanner in the woods and take his gun? So we get in this huge argument about this, where me and Tanner we could seriously be in danger because at the very least, someone's been sneaking themselves into our fucking trailer without us knowing and mingling with us. And at worst, someone or something bad is in the fucking forest with us. One of the girls is crying and saying that she wants to go right now, and we're telling her that we shouldn't because none of us are walking through the woods in the middle of the night. At this point, the sun is starting to go down, and it's getting a little cloudy out. We eat something and turn on the radio for a while. We can't really get a station out there with anything decent, so we turn it off about the time Tan's cousin shows up. He was like 19, I think. At this point, the sun is just barely over the horizon, and he has one of those heavy-duty lantern flashlights and another rifle. He walks up to the trailer, and we whisper to Tan, asking if he's sure that's his cousin, and he says yes. The guy looks behind him and all around the camp, then walks in. He kind of glances at all of us and looks a little confused. He says, "Where's your other little buddy at?" I figured she would meet me up at the cabin. Is she a little slow or something? He also asked whether we had been cooking blood in the cabin, because it smelled like blood and hot pans all the way up the trail. We were all like, fucking nope. But we asked him what the fuck he's talking about with the girl he saw. He'd come down the same trail Tan had been using, and he'd come up on one of those use guy's buddies, standing in the middle of the trail, looking at him slack-jawed. He'd asked her a bunch of questions, but all she did was just look at him. And then she smiled back at him, and he said he kept walking. She couldn't seem to keep up with him and kept lagging a little bit behind him. He said he had asked her if she was hurt or something, and if she needed any help. But she continued to stare. Eventually, he had been walking and turned around in a bend in the trail. But when he turned around and went back to see if she was okay, the trail was empty. He'd assumed she'd taken some kind of shortcut through the woods to our trailer. We tell him the whole story of what's been going on. I half expected him to say we were full of shit, but he just listened and then sat down on the couches in the living room. Tanner's cousin gets back to the girl, he says. When she had been trying to lag behind him, it had kind of weirded the fuck out of him. So he tried to keep her in front of him, but no matter how slow he walked, she was always lagging a little behind. And that he smelled this nasty smell, and it got stronger as he got back to the camp. Eventually it got really strong. She had said something really low that he didn't catch, and when he turned, she had been right the fuck up on him. He stepped back from her. was at this point he asked her if she was okay, and if she wasn't, him to carry her back the rest of the way. She just kept staring. He said he reached out for her, as in to grab her on the shoulder, but he must have misjudged the distance, because she was off to the side where he'd put his hand, like she had moved while he was looking dead at her. So at this point, we know this shit's real, unless Tan's playing a joke, which we can tell he's not, because he's almost pissing his pants. So we load up their rifles, we eat some more, and we just kind of sit around until about 11. To this fucking day, every time I think about this, I really pray to God that it's just some huge prank that my cousins played on me and just never revealed, so I would shit for the rest of my life. At round 11, the stink of copper turns into an actual nasty, gross blood-like smell, like cooking, blood, and singed hair. Tan and his cousin Reese get the fuck up and instantly grab the rifles. There's like a half knocking, half clawing at the door, and I shit you not, there's this voice, and it sounds like when you see those YouTube cats and dogs whose owners teach them how to talk. It says in this halting, weirdly toned voice,
"Let me the fuck in. Stop fucking playing."
It made my fucking nuts creep up against my body, and one of the girls just starts crying and calling on Jesus. It was so fucking obviously not a person talking. It didn't have the right cadence. And that's when some shit that I never realized till that moment. But all people have a certain cadence when they talk, no matter what language. All people have a certain kind of rhythm to talking. This shit didn't have any kind of cadence or rhythm. One of those YouTube cats. That's what the fuck it sounded like outside the door. So now I'm on full terror mode. We keep yelling outside. Who is it? Stop fucking around, man. And it just keeps going.
In. Let me the fuck in.
For about almost 15 minutes. So then the smell goes away for a while. For the next hour or so, you can hear someone basically creeping around in the woods and shit. Every couple minutes, it'll come back into the door and start to say something. Finally, when the smell fades away, it's around 2 in the morning right now. Maurice says, "Man, fuck this." Opens the door and walks outside with his rifle. He fires a shot in the air and says something to the effect of, "In the name of Jesus Christ, go away." He fires 2 more times, and then from the woods, right up against the river of the trailer, it sounds like something is slowly gibbering and hooting. Then it starts screaming, and it almost sounds like a woman and a cat in a bag screaming together. Like I seriously have never heard any shit like that. And you can hear the brush over that way start to shake. Reese fires over into the tree line and starts back into the house. We lock the door, and we can hear the shit keening and screaming. Reese says something had come out of the bushes, super low to the ground, crawling toward the cabin. He had shot at it. Pretty much, that was how the rest of the night went. It was literally screaming constantly for the next 2 hours, and we could hear shit moving out into the tree line. But it never came back up to the cabin until everyone had fallen asleep. Tan had been sitting in the chair watching the door with his rifle. Nobody else heard or saw this. He had told me 2 days later after the whole thing was over. He had said he'd been nodding off after the screaming and the noises finally stopped. He had been almost asleep when he saw someone come out of the bathroom and lay down in the middle of the floor and go to sleep. He just assumed it was one of us and had nodded off. Then, he said he realized something was wrong, and while pretending to be sleeping, he counted us. There were 9 people in the cabin. He basically didn't want to try to shoot at the fucking thing in the cabin and have us kill us all, then and there. Or have Reese wake up and start shooting, and then we kill ourselves. So he just stayed awake all night, pretending to be asleep. He said sometimes it would stand up and do this weird jittery thing, or heave like it was laughing, but then it would lay back down. The story closes pretty weak, because from my perspective nothing happened. We woke up, and I noticed the tan was a little jittery, and that he was avoiding looking at all of us. But we ate some breakfast, packed up, and started walking to his house. He stayed last in the cabin and said he'd lock it up and bring me my uncle's keys. To just start walking, he'd catch up, which I really didn't want to fucking do. We got a little bit up the path and he kept running up. Basically, we just jogged back to his house. His cousin took us home. There was a window in the bathroom. Tan had gone back to lock up and he looked in there. We were too stupid to lock a screenless window. The window was fucking up when he went in there. I'm guessing it had been doing that all along, waiting for us to fall asleep or slip up and then getting in among us. It had walked with us all the goddamn way back to his house, and then he set it lagged to the back of the group and looked him dead in the eyes before walking back into the woods. So that's the story of Anansi's Goatman. I apologize for the slight stutter there. That's a little bit of a bad grammatical patch there in the story, and I was like, wow. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. So if you're watching this on YouTube, please check it out on Spotify. It's Donnie Giles' Scared Shitless. I'll be trying to put out episodes every Sunday. And if you are watching on YouTube, I will be providing an email for you guys to be sending in your own fan stories. Now, it's up to you guys to interpret whether the stories that I tell on this podcast are true or fabrications. That said, it's up to you. Send in whatever type of story you like, as long as it's your own original story, for a chance for me to recite the story at the end of the podcast. I'd like to take a moment to give my friend Cody Samples a shout out. He's making his own podcast, which I will also put a link to in the description of the YouTube video. If you're looking for it on YouTube and you've listened to this on Spotify, go to YouTube and just look up Donnie Giles' Scared Shitless. Thank you everybody for taking the time out to listen to this story. And be scared shitless.